Happy Friday, everyone. I'm Bandish, founder of The Curious Mindset. The Curious Mindset is a private invitation-only community for technology leadership teams, powered by 64 Tech, a technology provider across hardware, cloud, and IT services. Now, while 64 Tech supports the platform, the real value of this community comes from the people in this room. As responsibility grows, technology leaders are expected to move faster, decide with less information, and carry more weight, often without the space to think things through properly. Many leaders end up stuck in reactive mode, firefighting, buried in strategy decks, or chasing delivery. And somewhere in all of that noise, the space to think clearly quietly disappears. That's why we built the Curious Mindset, a space for technology leaders to step out of the noise and have honest conversations with people who understand the pressures of the role. There are no membership fees here, there are no intrusive sales methods, just human connection and valuable perspectives from people with experience. For those joining us for the first time, a quick bit of context. I started this community right at the beginning of the COVID lockdown, nearly 6 years ago. Now, whilst most VARs invest in sales and marketing, I chose to build something different, a place where tech leaders feel they belong and a circle that they can lean on, not a network they scroll past. Our belief is simple. Technology leaders lead better when they are not figuring out alone. And that belief sits at the heart of 64 Tech's mantra, together we grow. If you would like to explore how 64 Tech can support your team or hear more about the origin of the Curious Mindset, I would love to have a virtual coffee or meet anyone in person. You can book some time with me using the link below. We also have our community on WhatsApp where the conversation continues between sessions. Thank you all for being here today. Now it's my pleasure to hand you over to our host. Well, Andy McMenemy is our host, but we've got technical challenges with Andy's Wi-Fi. So our resident technology leader co-host, Steve Maxwell, is taking over, and with our special guest, Elise Foster.
These are big shoes to fill, folks. Andy is with us in spirit, so I'll do my best to channel his amazing hosting as we go through today. Welcome to the Curious Mindset, everybody. And first of all, Bandish, thank you, as ever, for your generosity and friendship, actually, in putting this community together. I have to say, whilst Easter was great, I did miss this session on Good Friday. So it's good to be back and to see you all. So it gives me great pleasure to welcome Elise to the Curious Mindset. This is her first session with us. Elise is a leadership coach, a speaker, and author who specializes in helping leaders unlock the full potential of their teams. She's a Harvard Management Fellow and the co-author of The Multiplier Effect, working closely with the framework developed by Liz Wiseman. She's got a background in engineering, like a lot of us, and Elise understands the analytical rigor required in technology roles. Her work focuses on the pivotal shift from being the smartest person in the room to becoming a leader who amplifies the intelligence and capability of those around them. She now helps senior tech leaders navigate the transition from technical excellence to human-centric. It's great to see you. We didn't have much time to practice before this release, but we'll go and we'll figure out as we go. I guess the first question for me is, what is the curious leader? What does that mean to you?
Well, it is great to be here and excited to spend some time with all of you today. When I think about a curious leader, I think the simplest way I think about it is how do we use everything we know to shape and influence the questions we ask, but do it in a way that we hold what we know lightly enough that it gives space for others to bring what they know. My experience in leading engineering projects, working with teams, is that we can get seduced by the deliverable and what we need to get done. And so we come in prepared with our answer and the technology or the science behind it and why this is the right direction. And that can blind us to hearing and really hearing what others are bringing to the table, because everybody, in my belief, is actually, let me say that differently. I know few leaders who show up and go like, let me see what I can do to be the worst at my job today. So people are really trying to do their very best, and we can sometimes dismiss it, not because it's wrong, but we dismiss it because we can't hear them because we haven't we've so focused on what's important to us and the perspective we want to bring to the table that we've lost sight of what others bring to the table.
That really resonates with me, Elise. In fact, there was a previous guest, Tim Spiker. He would talk about two of the most important traits of leadership were others focused and when inwardly sound. And what you speak there is kind of that resonating in slightly different language, isn't it? If the leader is focused more on themselves, they're going to be missing a lot of the signals, a lot of the information that is naturally there coming from the team, and we miss the signals. Say more about what you mean by that.
I think that's spot on, and I think it's a balance. We need both. You can't simply come in as a blank slate. It's almost in some ways, how do you have the appearance, and not in a fake way, but the appearance of a blank slate? I think, I guess to double down on the curiosity piece, it's when I think of a really truly curious question, it is a question I'm asking where I may actually be moved or shifted in my thinking based on what others are saying. And so one way I think about this is if you just think about kind of having any object in your hand and holding on to it. When we're thinking of others, we can hold on to it in a way that we can kind of put our ideas out there for others to see, touch, and feel. And when we're only thinking about ourselves, we tend to hold on to that so tightly that we can't let it go. People can't see, touch, and feel it. And because we're holding on so tightly and so focused on that, we can't hear and see what others are bringing. So we need both. And the more we can all kind of be a little looser in what we're bringing, I think the more opportunity we have to generate better ideas, to capitalize on the little bits of thinking that come from one person that sparks something in someone else. Because the beauty of a team is that you can create something that none of us have conceived of. And when we hold our ideas too tightly, we miss those little sparks.
Oh, 100%. Definitely. I can think of the times in my past when I've been holding on to my own ideas far too tightly. And not only do I miss the opportunity to multiply others' qualities and improve the idea, it also it also diminishes, doesn't it, the ability of the individuals in the team to think more. They're less likely to contribute going forward. So tell me then, Elise, how important do you think is it for leaders to understand and improve the quality of questions they ask so that their teams do feel comfortable to step into that potential?
I love that question. And what it immediately makes me think of is something that I imagine many of you are familiar with. And that moment where you were in a conversation with someone and they were engaging you with questions, or so they thought, but it felt much more like you were sitting in the interrogation room with the spotlight on you, and you were finding yourself having to defend every question. And because that's what happens when the questions start with do you, should you, could you, don't you think it'd be a good idea if people start to question their own perspective and oh, I didn't think of that, and now this is my team leader. I don't think I can let them in on a little secret that I didn't think of that. So I'm gonna figure out a way to not say that, but also it just disrupts my ability to really be in the moment. So I think it's about really sensing into what it feels like to be curious. And so, just for fun, maybe people on the call can really just take a moment to think about the last time you felt just genuinely curious. Not because you had to ask a question, and Steve, you may not be feeling that right now because you kind of got put on the spot. But the last time you felt genuinely curious, you didn't have to ask a question, but you really, really wanted to understand something. Just see if you can like sense into what that felt like for you.
Well, right now for me, Elise, I'm thinking about the definitely the relationship between feeling calm and feeling under pressure. Going back to the first point, when I'm really curious, there is no pressure. It doesn't really feel that pressure. It feels like there's space, there's mental space to sit and allow wisdom to almost emerge. That's probably how I describe it. Does that make sense? Does that feel right?
It makes a lot of sense to me, and I'm really curious when we get to the later Q&A what sense it makes for others.
Mm.
And what you just said there kind of about that mental space, when we are genuinely curious, people will be curious with us. They will be invited into and want to engage in that conversation because they'll feel that calm. They'll feel the spaciousness of having a dialogue, a conversation about what are we trying to solve. But when you start to add the stress and the pressure in, it be, it short circuits us from really just deepening into the moment. And so I think the more we can create that space for ourselves, we create that for others. And so I think the important thing for leaders is you can just do a quick scan throughout your day. Which of the meetings that you're in do you have that feeling of calm and ease in the conversation? What's made that possible? And when you start to see that slip away, what's causing it to maybe slip away? And then, and I'll just add from those experiences, reflect on that and then say, okay, what do I want to apply next time when I start to see my curiosity slipping away just a bit?
Right. Okay, I'm going to have a quick pause for a second, Elise. Phil, thank you for your message. I'm told I'm a bit on the quieter side of my mic, so I'm going to move this slightly towards me. This is part of the script, obviously. Hopefully that's a bit easier for everyone to hear. Elise, another question. I'm curious about how some leaders have the mindset of, trying to get the best out of their teams. In actual fact, I'm going through quite a lot of interviews at the moment on a personal note, and I'm finding that's generally speaking the narrative that I'm asked to explain. How do I get the best out of my teams? But from what I've understood from the briefing and your work, Elise, that it's actually better to think of unlocking their individual team members' potential instead. Do you think that's the right shift? And how does that shift the responsibility and workload, do you think, from the leader?
So happy to wade into that with you. I wonder just if you'd be willing to kind of share how you see those differently right now.
Okay, so to put a bit more into this, there is, in our group at Curious Mindset, we obviously are exploring the human aspects of leadership. We recognize that the human part is the hardest part of tech leadership. Most of the time is because we've grown up being techies ourselves, and we've moved at some point in our careers from being the technical individual contributor to now responsible for the team. And certainly in my experience, people find that transition probably harder than they would otherwise anticipate. And I think what happens is leaders tend to get into the habit of trying to do more in the same mode, by being a technical doer and basically enforcing that amongst our teams. And from what I can gather from the brief, there's a flip. If we can think of ourselves less as being somebody who drives the best performance out of our team and more like unlocks what's already in there. That's my interpretation of this shift. Does that make sense?
Yes, and I appreciate you kind of articulating that because as I first heard it, there's a way I can hear the word driving performance similarly to unlocking people's capability. What I think I hear you describing in the shift that's hard for leaders to make, and something it's hard for me, and something I've seen is hard for other leaders. It's being the driver of the performance, being the one who is doing as opposed to the one who is enabling others to do. Is that the shift you're talking about?
Yeah, absolutely. There's an expectation that as you step into a leadership position, the goal is to multiply, I suppose, the output of the team rather than being your own individual contributor. And so I suppose I'm curious about that. It's a dangerous place, I think, isn't it? The minute what's got you to here is being excellent at time management, excellent in your technical sphere of expertise, and stepping into a leadership position, all of a sudden you're not in control of the output, not directly, indirectly you are, and you've got to try to encourage people to adopt the same standards. But if you force it too hard, I'm just wondering, does that become the diminisher that you're speaking of?
Um, sorry, I have a lot of thoughts going on. I'm taking a couple of notes just so I don't lose sight of anything. I think uh, there are two things coming up for me in that shift from, technical doer to technical leader. There's a lot happening there, and you're transitioning from one identity of the person who got things done and drove performance and drove deliverables and made customers happy to the person who's leading that work. And that comes with different expectations, different responsibilities, and a different way of being in that work. And sometimes it's really easy to hang on to that old identity because it's natural and it's comfortable and it doesn't feel as hard. And so when we have a threat to being the person who gets stuff done, we start to be the person who gets stuff done. And we pull things back from our team that they should rightly be doing. And so there's just a piece that I encourage leaders to kind of think about. What do I feel is at risk for me if I really leave this on Steve's plate and I let him run with it? What's at stake for me? And to name those stakes, to have a clearer picture of how you might choose to intervene then when you can separate the stakes about you from getting the thing done. And I think the other side of that is, and we talked about this in our briefing a little bit, is what was immediately coming to mind for me is you are paying these people 100% of their salary. It's really, I mean, why would you? It would be irresponsible as a leader to not get 100% of their intelligence. So if you are constantly doing the thing you have asked them to do, I mean, someone who's more financially minded than me might say you're not doing, you're not being a good financial steward of the organization. But beyond that, you are leaving intelligence on the table, you're leaving possibility on the table, and it gets compounded because when people start to, feel micromanaged, or they have work taken away, or they don't feel like you value their work, they start to pull back. And then it creates a difficult spiral, which is, well, now they're not performing. So you give them less work, so they perform even less. And then they keep kind of pulling back. And so to be more aware of where you might be contributing to their lack of performance, I think that's probably one of the hardest things to do as a leader, but probably one of the most important things you can get curious about beyond the work, beyond the questions you ask of the people that you're leading, is what's my part? How am I contributing to this dynamic?
There's again lots of thoughts popping into my mind, at least from what you're saying there, particularly the relationship between micromanagement and the inevitable result that at least people kind of leaning back and taking probably less on, or if it doesn't, it's probably because the leader is micromanaging even more to keep the output kind of going. Elise, have you got any personal examples? This is going to sound like an interview question now. That's not intended to be. But is there any examples that you can give from when you've been in that situation, just to kind of bring it to life a little bit? When you had to kind of, I suppose, turn that sort of situation around. Maybe somebody who you've been working with has been slightly detached. How have you brought them back in again?
Uh, so it's a great question, and I might tank my credibility here. It's been a long time since I've worked inside an organization. I've been doing executive and team coaching for close to 20 years now. I have a lot of partners I work with, but it's a different relationship than being embedded in an organization. And
Mm.
so probably the examples that most come to mind are actually as a parent and thinking about and it's different here in the US than in the UK. We've just gone through the college application cycle. I have a senior in high school, and let's just say it's not the most fun process for a parent. It's even less fun for a student. And so through our process together, there were many moments where, like, and I come from an engineering background. I am really good at organizing and planning. I can see where we need to go and I can set the milestones really clearly. A 17-year-old high school student, that capability is still developing. And so it's really hard for me, like as we got through this process, I'm like, okay, where's your, I didn't have her make a Gantt chart, but like, where's your where's your timeline? What do you need to have done here and there? And what I found was um, just even those, like those were the non-curious questions. Where's your timeline? What's your step-by-step process? How are you going to get this done? And and what I started to see was her pulling back, and like it was like, yeah, I'll get to it tomorrow. Yeah, tomorrow. I'll get there tomorrow. And so it was a big shift in how do we because I was owning the process and she wasn't owning the process. And so I did a couple things. You can phone a friend. My husband is less micromanagey than I am. So he stepped in to help support the process. So there's just some self-awareness there. Like, I'm really good at project planning and it's hard for me to let go. I'm going to bring in someone else. He's equally good at it, but he can let it go better. And then when I'm in conversation, it's different kinds of questions like, how are you feeling about the application process? What schools are most exciting you right now? What's your sense for what needs to happen before we get through the weekend? Those kinds of things to be able to return ownership to her so that it's a process she's excited about. It's something that she wants to give all of her attention to.
Well, that really resonated with me, Elise. I've got a 16-year-old who went through, over here, we have GCSEs at 16. It's the national exams. And everything you said there really related. I think looking back on it, I probably owned the process a little bit too much rather than encouraging my son to own the process. But hey,
Well,
we all get through it, don't we?
we do, and it comes from a good place. And I think
Mm.
that's probably for all of the leaders listening, if you're like, oh, I do that, and apparently I shouldn't be doing that. It comes from a good place. Like there are a few people who come up and go, like, I'm just going to do the worst job I possibly can today. There are very few leaders that show up and go, let me see what I can do to get as little as possible out of Steve. And so going back to inviting yourself to think about when I step in, when I ask the question about the timeline, when I choose to pull back or reassign work, what's my motivation? What's driving this here? Is it because I worry about me looking good or something else? Or is it really a client deliver? Like what's really driving it? And just being honest with yourself about those kinds of things, because with awareness comes choice. You might, instead of checking in on day 25, you might wait till day 26 because you can think back and go, oh, this person does best in the hours before the deadline, and not realizing that when you email them a week before the deadline, that just annoys them and pushes them to, not intentionally, by the way, but they're like, yeah, I'll get to that. My process is this.
Really interesting. That whole piece around self-awareness is a continuous theme here, and cultivating that self-awareness oftentimes is the most important thing that we can do as a leader. Speaking of self-awareness and bringing it back to curiosity, be more curious. It's easy to say, isn't it? But just be more curious. And I'm just really interested to know, what does that look like in practice? Is it a personality trait, or is it actually a skill that you can cultivate? What sort of things can our community do to maybe cultivate curiosity, if indeed it is something that we can cultivate?
You've got me going a few different directions because I suspect for some people it is a skill. It is just their natural gift to be really, really curious.
Mm.
Um, and for others, it's something that can be cultivated. And I'm probably somewhere in between. I came out of engineering and my job was to find the flaws in the process and fix them. There was a whole lot of giving answers in the manufacturing. Like, why are we not getting these out the door fast enough? Oh, well, let me go investigate and tell you why. Now, I brought curiosity into the investigation, but it was very much around the facts, the figures, the technical details. And while there was good work being done, I probably missed something by not being really curious about, wow, we set this process up in this way, but we seem to always have this issue. What might be going on here with the people that are running the process, as opposed to just the technical bits of the process? So that's just one piece of it. I think, how do you cultivate it? I think the thing that's coming to my mind is first, just getting a scan across your day of the moments you find yourself most curious, and seeing what patterns you can pick up about the context, the people, the topics, and then getting curious with yourself about what's driving that curiosity. And in some ways, and let me be clear, this isn't wrong. Sometimes we're uber curious about a thing because it's going to help us reach a deliverable. And I suspect that feels different than the feeling of curiosity you described earlier, when there was a calm and no pressure. And so the more you can start to notice those patterns, I think that's probably the first thing. The next is just to try on more questions anywhere you are. And at its simplest, it's in my mind not about a list of questions, because those can sound uncurious when you actually don't care about the answer. But pushing yourself to ask the what and the how might we kinds of questions, less than the ones that are tending to frame toward yes, no, do you, did you, could you, would you, and less why. Because in my experience anyway, and go back to my daughter and her college experience, well, why are you having such a hard time getting your application completed? That's immediately what's wrong with you, kid? And what's going on here, as opposed to, what's happening for you when you sit down with the application, or any number of other questions. And another good rule of thumb that I'll just look for your patterns and just ask more questions, and then repeat that cycle. Wow, what kinds of questions did I tend to ask? And when a rule of thumb that I learned a number of years ago, as I was trying to be a better coach and to just be a better team member, was I was, sharing some experience, some frustration that I was having with a team that I was on. They'd asked me to do a thing, and I did the thing, and then they were, coming back with some sort of like, this is wrong, or no, or it was, I told you you could do that, but I didn't really mean it. And so I was really frustrated, and I'm, sharing this with a coach, and she's like, well, what do your questions sound like? And I, gave some examples, and she said, when you can ask a question and add comma, you idiot, at the end, it's probably not a very good question. So kind of in the theme of noticing your patterns, how many of your questions can you add comma, you idiot, to the end of?
It reminds me of something else around about writing styles, where if you can write by monkeys at the end of the sentence, it means it's a passive statement. Have you heard this? So if you
I
say
have not, but I love it.
yeah, if you say I wrote this document or something, that's an active sentence. But if you say the document was written, and if it makes grammatical sense by putting in by monkeys at the end of it, it's obviously a passive statement. And you just got me thinking about that with the you idiot part on the questioning. It's very good, very, very good. And you know what? This is really interesting, because I'm finding myself right now trying to think of questions that might build on what you're saying. And sometimes they're coming through and they're going, well, it doesn't really feel like it's actually a question that I should have asked on previous point rather than one right now. Speaking of which, I've got one here. Where has it gone? Sorry, 1 second. Yeah, so many of our community, Elise, are navigating the similar sort of pivot to what you've done, moving from technical authority to human-centric leader. thinking about, you said earlier on that you had to let go of some of this stuff as you moved into executive coaching. Is there anything from your engineering identity that you've kept hold of um, in your career today?
Um, it's a great question. And if we have time, I want to kind of come back to that experience for you of you coming to that question, because I think there's some fun things to unpack there.
Yeah.
I will answer the question though, and I think probably one of the things that I probably hold on to most is the systems thinking approach of engineering and looking for patterns. I think that's one of the things that sets me apart as a coach. I have an ability to engage and look at the whole system the person is living in, and bringing that into the conversation gives them an opportunity to sometimes recognize that for as much as they are a part of creating whatever pattern they don't want to have anymore, there are also other elements of that pattern. So I think systems thinking is one, problem solving for sure, but that's one that's one of the probably areas where I have to remind myself to hold my solution much more lightly, because I was an industrial engineer, process engineer. My job was legitimately just to find all the faults in the system. How do we find all the ways this is going wrong so we can make it better? So I am, and if any of you are familiar with multipliers, we talk about a concept of native genius. What's that thing that comes easily and freely? Like you don't have to think about doing it. Process improvement, and I know it sounds silly, like I call it my evil genius because I can look around and find the faults like no other. And why I call it my evil genius is because when you are working with leaders who are actively wanting to get better, when you are working with your kids who are actively just being kids, they don't want to be told all day what they're doing wrong. They don't want you to raise those. And so I have to, I bring that, but I have to hold that so lightly that I can find ways to bring it into the conversation such that it really is a curiosity. Hey, I wonder if it'd be okay if I shared a pattern I'm noticing with you. One of the things I hear you say over and over again, just was working with a leader, and this leader constantly in every conversation was asking a version of, do you get me? Do you understand what does that make sense? That was his phrase. Does that make sense? And when someone says that enough times, it's like, well, that's so interesting. And I wonder how that lands for others. And what are you going for there? Like, for some people, it's very much kind of adding right on, like, you get me, and this is what you're going to do, right? And for him, it was something else. But how do I do that in a way that doesn't put the person off, but invites them into the inquiry?
Fascinating, really, really fascinating. Um, we're coming up not too far away now, Elise, from the Q&A section, where what we do is we invite, we go into gallery mode and we invite the members of the community to come along and ask questions. That's going to be a little bit different because, of course, usually that's the role that I'll be taking. Until this point, I'll have been looking at the chat and seeing what's coming through. Brian has been doing a great job in the background doing that, I think, for us so far. But before we move on to that, I just wanted to ask you, Elise, is there one piece of advice you could give to a leader who is new to their role, stepping into leadership for the first time, around how to hold on to that curiosity? Speaking personally right now, this is of course a new role for me in today, and curiosity probably is one of the first things to go, probably. And so is there any
Mm.
advice that you can give to leaders who are stepping into their role for the first time to maintain and even cultivate that curiosity?
Uh, the thing that's coming to me in this moment is a little bit of what was coming to me when you were framing that last question.
Hmm.
I could be totally wrong about this, but I had a sense that for a moment you were stepping into what's the objective of this call? What do our members need? And how do I meet their need? So let me find the question that is going to 100% meet their need. And I suspect that interrupted your ability to really listen to and process what we had been talking about up till then, to be able to ask that question when you're in your calm sense of curiosity. I
I
see
think
you
you're
nodding your
spot on.
head. So
Yeah.
maybe there's some truth to that. I probably don't have it 100%. And so what that's coming up, what that's bringing up for me is, especially as a new leader, you'll likely be feeling the pressure and the stress of deliverables and what are they expecting me to do? And I need to be able to prove myself in this role. And so, as contrary as it sounds to being successful in a role, I think my invitation would be, how do you let go of the thing you think you're supposed to do for a moment so you can really be in connection and conversation with your team members as you're getting to know them, to understand what they've been doing up till you join the team, and any number of other things. And I think the maybe a going back to your earlier question around some people wanting to maybe shift into more kind of consulting or coaching, that kind of thing. I think, and this is somewhat new for me, somebody in a recent conversation, we were talking about kind of the, first client touch point, and or a few, scoping out the work and what do you need? And there's a way in which you can enter that conversation very diagnostically. Okay, so Steve, what's going on with your team? What is it that you need to solve, et cetera, et cetera. And it garners good data. It misses something important though, and that is the connection and being in relationship with Steve and understanding and really getting a feeling from Steve. What's it like to lead this team? What are you, when you feel like you're at your best leading this team, what's going on for you? That's very different than tell me what you want to fix, but very telling and builds a stronger relationship, which generally makes it easier for us to work together, to build trust, to be able to deliver together.
I think that's really brilliant. What came up for me there, at least, sorry, is the relationship, if you like, or the tension between leadership and curiosity, and then hiding behind the process. So I think what came up for me there was that, the curious mindset, we've got a process. We've got the fireside chat section, which is Andy and guest. Then we've got a Q&A section, and they kind of provide almost like signposts in the hour journey that we've got with our community. I suppose what was coming up for me was probably the instinctive seeking out or desire for that process that was going to keep me safe in this moment, and that's probably where that curiosity and the disconnect probably came from. So it's fascinating. I find this conversation brilliant. It's been an absolutely new experience for me. It's been wonderful to speak with you and to share it with you, Elise. So I really appreciate everything that you've done today in here. I'm now going to pass over to Bryony, if I would.